Hello and welcome. I would like to thank the Open Forum for putting together this panel of esteemed Afghan women and for inviting me to be the moderator today. I will briefly introduce myself. My name is Mina Sharif. I was born in Afghanistan, raised in Canada, and returned to Afghanistan in 2005. I spent about 15 years in the country. I have had the privilege to visit about 30 of our beautiful provinces. And although I haven't worked in the political sphere, I have a lot of grassroots experience and a very deep rooted love for the Afghan people and a strong belief in all of our right to peace, to prosperity, to security, and absolutely that applies to women who are half of the population as well. Thank you for joining us today. Please feel free to share your questions, whether they're directed at any of the speakers in particular or just in general. We look forward to interacting with you. I will introduce each of our speakers one at a time. And what they will do is tell you more about themselves, as well as let you know a little of their story in recent times and how they see the prospect and possibility of interacting with the Taliban on women's rights. Our first speaker is Homaira Kozad, and she is on the board of directors at the Afghan Women's Chamber of Commerce and Industry and a strong advocate for Afghan women. Thank you, Homaira John.
Bismillah. Thank you, Mina Jan, and thank you, Open Forum, for providing us this opportunity to be here today. As Mina Jan said, I'm an Afghan woman involved in the economy, and I'm an advocate for Afghanistan and Afghan people. Sadly, currently I'm living in Canada due to last affair, what happened in Afghanistan. I had to move back to Canada. And as an Afghan woman, I felt that like all my dreams shattered in a single minute. I lost everything from A to Z of my life. Friends, family, everything I had, I left behind. And it's really hard to even imagine that in a country you build everything and in a second minutes you have to leave it. And after that, the only thing is remain with you is like your memories from those beautiful land and people you have seen and build a relationship over there. As an Afghan who's a member of a board of Afghanistan Women Chamber of Commerce, I have seen a lot of changes in the life of women in past 20 years. And sadly, now these days, the only thing I see is just like a negative news from Afghanistan and Afghan women involvement. For me as Afghan women, it's really hard to see these days. We hoped for a better future, but sadly, due to political issues, that our allies felt it's safe to leave Afghanistan like this in hand of a group that once upon a time they called them terrorist group. And now the terrorist group, the current rulers become a safe people, and they felt that they have to leave everything behind, and from whatever they believe in democracy, women's rights, and everything. And now the states, it's a dark, it's nothing is visible for future, and I don't know what's going to happen as a woman. The day I left Afghanistan, it was the saddest day of my life, and I had to run for something that I didn't know what was going on. And the moment was so crucial that I cannot even go back to that the day I left Afghanistan. Whenever I think about it, automatically my heart breaks in thousand pieces. And that few hours of my life, to just like from my apartment to airport, was the roughest time of my life. From getting to airport of Kabul, that was a nightmare. I have seen people crumble beneath the foot. I seen people died, actually, like small children left behind. The parents were other side of the airport, and the child was somewhere that we were shocked. We didn't know what was going on, to be honest with you. From that stage to now, it has been 6 months, and it's not only me. I think entire country, entire population is in a state of shock. We don't know what's going on exactly with our lives at this point. And coming back to current situation with the Afghan women, I'm more involved in past few years in less politics, more economic aspect of activities. And I see that currently Afghanistan is in a merge of clubs in terms of economy. And sadly, we are losing everything. We have more than 4,000 registered women businesses in Afghanistan, and many of them, they don't have a man to run the businesses, and they are the only breadwinner of the family. And now with this rule and regulation that the current ruler of Afghanistan putting for women, it makes it really challenging for them. Like having a maharam to go somewhere, it's very hard for those women that they have lost in past 40 years of were their maharams and men of their lives. And also the day by day we are seeing the new rulers that they're putting more pressure on women, and they're scared more from women as well. I want to shout out to those brave women from here that they stood up for their rights in terms of work, education, and we've seen it what had happened for them. Like, we have seen those women being put behind the bars, and for simple asking the simple things, the first basic needs of a human being: education, food, right to work. And that's scary for me. That's scary for a lot of women that they want to be more involved. I have a factory in Afghanistan, and I want to be more involved. And I with this situation and uncertainty, I don't know how I'm going to go back. Is it safe for me to go back? Is it I will be recognized as a woman because to be more involved and participate in terms of economy, generating economy for my people? I don't know. Like these questions is like really hurting me, and I was hoping that now, as the Taliban was saying previously, that there's a shift, there are changes in their mindset. I was hoping that I would be enduring and seeing more of this positive changes, but sadly, day by day, it's more heartbreaking and negative news from Afghanistan than something positive. The government is running just only by certain groups and certain people. They are not recognizing other ethnicity in Afghanistan currently, which is like concerning as well, and especially like women's right. We don't have the simple right of going back to schools, and you can't run a country without involvement of a woman. And that is something that I'm concerned, and I hope that today my voice reaches to those people that are like advocating in behalf of Taliban to listen and understand that that it's not easy for all Afghan women to be away or kept away from being involved, going to schools, teaching. Like, we need doctors, nurses. So they have to understand they cannot put us aside or ignore us, our person in Afghanistan. As you might know that like more than half of population is a women in Afghanistan. So you cannot ignore half of the population in Afghanistan. I'm really concerned that some of our international partners are kind of like forgetting why they were in the first place in Afghanistan. They came for like a betterment of like human rights in Afghanistan, and now they are the one who are ignoring the fact. They were the one that like dragging all us back to 20 years back, to dark ages that they were called, and that's a shame actually, that leaving a country involved for 20 years and spend trillions of dollars over there, and suddenly in a blink of eye you guys felt that like it's safe for everybody to leave. And now with the collapse of economy, the poverty, Afghanistan people are suffering. And I'm shocked day by day by the news that, like, out of anger, the families are selling their children and all those things. I think we have to be engaging more in terms of like the talk with the Taliban. I think I'm shouting out to the people who are involved in Afghanistan in terms of like providing the opportunities that women could be more involved and engage in daily activities, and also the opportunities needs to be provided for women to be getting to understand the situation. And Taliban has to come and sit with women in Afghanistan and ask them what we want as an Afghan woman. For us, it's really important to be more involved. And many of us, like, really, we are living outside of Afghanistan, but still we are wishing that we can return back. So please, and be the voice of Afghan women. I'm shouting out here that we need to be in every single decision making. We need to be seeing more women in high chairs as a minister, deputy ministers, and in where we are more useful. So this is something that I wish, and also I wish that by the coming spring we will see more universities to open to women and to girls, and that's something that I really concern. Back to you, Minna John.
Some really great points, and I think that we'll come back to questions about it, particularly when it comes to economy, because there's so much focus on girls getting back to school and getting back into university potentially, but if they're not a part of the working force, as has been brought up, then we have to consider whether or not that is a balance in the end. We do have two other speakers, and I will get to them before we get to questions for everybody. Our two other speakers are Mariam Suleiman Khail, who's a member of parliament representing the Kuchi or nomad tribes, as well as Crystal Bayat, who is a writer and human rights activist, and a strong advocate for the rights of Afghan women. And you will recognize her from protests that were held after the fall of Kabul on Independence Day, holding up the Afghan flag. I'm really excited to hear from both of them as well. We'll start with Mariam Suleiman Khail, who will tell us about a little bit about her story, as well as her thoughts on engagement with the Taliban when it comes to human rights.
The open forum for hosting this event. It's really important to hear from voices such as Crystal John, Homaira John, and Mina John of what's happened and what's currently going on the ground in Afghanistan. If you ask me, women like Homaira John, myself, and Crystal not being in Afghanistan right now is a form of protest. Us being there right now would be legitimizing them in a way that we wouldn't actually want. It's really important to note one thing, and that is that the Taliban don't represent any specific ethnicity or locality in Afghanistan. They actually, they're more of an ideology. They represent an extremist, violent ideology, and it's grown out of the madrasas in Pakistan and our neighboring countries, unfortunately. When we're talking about the engagement with the Taliban so far, there has been no benefit. They have made zero compromises on their hegemonic rule, and the way they have been treating our people, engaging them without any precondition, only emboldens their posture. In Norway, the Taliban spoke of inclusivity and the respect for human rights, but their crackdown on women, human rights activists, journalists, former ANDSF personnel, and civilians not only continues, but is getting worse. 6 months have passed, and there has been no sign of relief or stability for the people. Their mullah-centric approach towards governance has resulted in total failure in basic services and delivery. The unfortunate incident of Haidari's avoidable death, a little boy from Zabul province who was stuck in a well, is a stark reminder of how Taliban lack any respect for the value of human life. They only saw Haidari's case as a good photo op. The Taliban continue to make false promises of inclusivity. They have no clear agenda for how the future inclusive government might look like. They don't seem to have any desire to engage with the Afghan people more than any Afghan politician, be it Karzai Saib, Dr. Abdullah, or any other significant figure in Afghanistan. They have had more meetings with Pakistani politicians, TV anchors, madrasa heads, religious leaders, ISI leadership, Pakistani foreign minister, and especially the Pakistani ambassador to Afghanistan, who acts as the rightful viceroy to our country. Lastly, our future engagement with the Taliban. The global community must realize that between their demands and the demands of the Taliban, there is a population of more than 35 million people who are totally neglected of their say. We demand that the global community only engage with the Taliban based on preconditions, and that part of the Taliban, the Afghan people, are considered as one side to the discussion over the future of Afghanistan. There was a question that was given to us in regards to the current state of what's happening in Afghanistan. Currently, there are women who are being murdered. Just the other day, a woman in Kandahar was murdered. There are women who are missing. There are women who are being forced to give to say that we're pro-Taliban from the protesters. I think Crystal John will have more knowledge on this, who have been caught by the Taliban, who are giving statements saying that there are women outside of Afghanistan supporting them, and that they're pro-Taliban now, and this is just a foreign project. Women are scared. Women are abandoned. There's no one keeping them safe. When I speak to the women that I know on the ground every day, I tell them to stay home. I tell them not to make a move until we find a support system for them. I've been screaming since the day I left in August 15th about how the UN should have a security mechanism and a monitoring mechanism for the amnesty cards. They have yet to do so. So why should the women speak out? Why should the women protest at this moment right now? No one in the world is paying attention. No one in the world is keeping those women safe. Me, myself, Homaira Jan, Crystal John, Mina John, other women like us, we have the privilege of being able to cry. We have the privilege to be able to speak out and say what's happening in our countries because we're safe right now. But the women in Afghanistan are not. And I can't even talk about the fear and the horror that we saw when we were escaping Afghanistan, because what's happening today is even worse than the day that I left. Again, I'm going to have to say, no, I don't see any benefit in engaging with the Taliban. We saw what they were about in the 90s. They haven't changed one bit. They might have even gotten worse. They have a PR team behind them, an entire generated PR team behind them. So until there's a true inclusive government, which is recognized first and foremost by the Afghan people internally, that represents all of the minorities, women, all religious groups, I don't think we'll see true peace. And if you believe it's only an Afghan problem, you're being quite naive. What happens in Afghanistan affects the entire world, not just the region. It affects the Muslim world, it affects the Western world, and it's quite dangerous. And we will see the repercussions if this is not acted upon soon. Where the discussion needs to begin is within the international community. The international community needs to stand up with Afghan women and make sure that we have a seat at the table as equals. Thank you, Mina Jan.
Thank you, Mariam John. I really appreciate that. You brought up some excellent points. I think, in particular, when you mentioned the Taliban not having changed and potentially even being worse or more dangerous, one good example of that is sort of the inconsistency in their behavior, while some of their behavior remains exactly the same. They initially were very against the use of television or the use of technology, but because it's available to them at their benefit, that is something they're no longer strict about. Meanwhile, when it comes to women and their access to education and the workforce, that remains the same. Their brutality towards women and to certain ethnic groups and religious groups remains the same, proven not only within the entire span of the last 20 years, but proven even more so in the last 6 months. I'm going to allow our next speaker, Crystal Bayot, to speak, and then we will start to take some questions from the audience. Thank you, Crystal. Crystal, your microphone is muted.
I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Mina John, and a bunch thanks from the organizer of this event and inviting me for this fruitful conversation, and honored to be among this distinguished guests. Actually, apart from being an activist in Afghanistan, I was a writer, and I have written lots of articles regarding civilization, democracy, and gender inequality, as well as women and human rights. After the occupation of Afghanistan by the Taliban, unfortunately, women are not allowed to share their ideas and opinion regarding the human rights, women rights, or democracy with media. So after when the Taliban took power in Afghanistan, I was induced by the fear of losing rights and freedom of Afghan citizens, especially women, when I saw everything being destroyed. I decided to protest against the Taliban because I saw that the protest was the only means that I could do and fight against our enemy. So that was the only option, that we must to do what we can. The reason that really I saw at that time in the first 3 days when Taliban took power in Afghanistan was first that my friends were going to office normally, and then the Taliban barred them, stopped them from their job. As the second, when the Taliban obliterated all the female-centric posters in Kabul, which was intolerable for all the women who fought over the past 20 years for their rights and freedom. So, but yeah, I faced a lot of violence during my protest when I came out of home and stand against the Taliban. But in order to keep the voice and the rights of women, I had to do this. Definitely the evacuation process, as Homaira Jan mentioned, it was the bitter stories of many Afghans' life, but it was bittersweet because it saved the life of lots of people in Afghanistan. But when I saw the women, the people of Afghanistan in the plane, that they carried their dreams with themselves, and facing that condition is an unforgettable memory in my life. But coming to the United States and start a new life from scratch is really difficult for all the people. I mean, it's not only about Afghan, for all refugees, it's really difficult because since the time I left Afghanistan and I started living in the United States, I know life, I'm safe here. I can speak about injustice that Taliban are doing in Afghanistan, the violence that they are doing towards women and all Afghan citizens who were part of a previous government over the past 20 years. But I have to mention that unfortunately, this is the reality of Afghanistan, that the Taliban are in power right now. But what we can do is right now that to ensure the peace is built, it should like the women's rights should be protected. The woman should have the rights to be an entrepreneur. The women their rights should be protected to be as a politician, to be as a leader, as Mariam John was a member of parliament. So we need I mean, first of all, I have to say that we don't need to talk with Taliban because they are terrorists and they don't believe in the principle of humanity. If they are not regretting from what they did over the past 20 years, sorry, if they are not regret their past actions, I'm pretty sure that they will not be changed. Because what I saw in my protest when I was talking for the first time face to face with a Talib, that they are not changed and they don't believe in the human rights, women rights. So I think talking with them is somehow formalizing Taliban. We don't need to talk with them because they don't accept the other ethnicities inside of Afghanistan. They don't accept the new generation's thought. They are not able to accept these changes that happened over the last 20 years in Afghanistan. And in my thought that the international community must form a new government which is based on the will of people. Let's hear from what the people want inside of Afghanistan. And unfortunately, I have to say that there are some people outside of Afghanistan that they're lobbying for this terrorist government. I don't see that Taliban is a legitimate government. Coming to the case of the kid recently, Taliban did worse than this accident that happened. They didn't regret from the attack in maternity hospitals. They killed more than 100 kids, 100 civilians. They are still concerned about the life of the human. In my opinion, they don't. I think the life of Afghans or a life of a person for the Taliban doesn't matter. So the Taliban must accept the changes. The Taliban must, if they want to stay in Afghanistan, they have to think about this, that it's not the Afghanistan that was in 1997, when everyone kept silent and accept them. We're gonna not accept Taliban if they don't accept these changes. We have given enough sacrifice over past 20 years. We can't just ignore them. The sacrifice that we have given, we can't ignore them. I never forgive the blood of my countrymen, the army, the innocent civilians for the Taliban. I'm so sorry for those people who ignored all these facts, and then they are now being a voice for Taliban outside of the country. And for those leaders who are formalizing and legitimizing Taliban, I have a very short message to them: that send your daughter, send your wife, send your family inside of Afghanistan. If they are able to live under the Taliban rule, then legitimize them. If they are able to not go to school, if they are not allowed to go to school, to job, to drive, to be what they dream for, so how you can legitimize that kind of government? And in my perspective, everyone is claiming that Taliban became God or they are changed. I must say that they are under the monitor of international community. International communities are watching Taliban. That's why they are good. Once they get their when they get recognition from the international community, I'm pretty sure that they will start the violence, which is going right now. They are going at 2 a.m. in house of a female and abdicated and keep them more than 1 month in their custody. How we can say that they are which I know, I was in contact on the ground with these women, and it's really difficult to hear their stories. So all I can say that I don't agree with anyone who is saying that we need to talk with the Taliban, because talking with them is formalizing them, legitimizing them. So my last message is that please care about Afghans' life. It's very difficult for those men that they are for those men and women who are the only breadwinner and they are unable to put food on the table for their kids. Afghanistan is facing a catastrophic situation right now. Hunger, unemployment, and apart from that is that they lost their inner peace. Everyone is living in fear. Everyone is living in fear of losing their life within a minute. Thank you so much, Mina Jan.
Thank you so much, Crystal John. I really appreciate that. You brought up so many wonderful points, and we're all so proud of you for the bravery that you showed when you protested while the Taliban had taken over. And women who continue to do that are being arrested and detained, and nobody seems to freely be able to speak their minds about these rights. You also brought up the fact that there seems to be a narrative of Taliban support. I feel as though there are people making this point that perhaps the Taliban is something that Afghanistan wants. And from what you said, we have to think about, where are these messages coming from? Who is implying that this is what Afghanistan wants? Where are they saying this from? And who is telling us that this Taliban should be supported? I'm going to take a question from the audience. I'm going to direct this at Homaira Jan. I think we have a pretty clear answer from both Mariam and Crystal about engaging with the Taliban. This question is, if we do not engage with the Taliban, Homaira Jan, what are your thoughts about what the way is forward?
Thank you, Mina Jan.
Thank you, Mina Jan.
Engagement, I think before even we start talking about engagements, Taliban needs to do a few things, just like asking people exactly what people of Afghanistan wants. If they want to be there involved, if they want to be part of Afghanistan people lives, they have to ask, like, exactly the Afghanistan people needs what sort of government. Before we even talk about engagements, we should solve something. It's just like if people of Afghanistan currently they are lost, they don't want to know what's going on, uncertainty, as Crystal John and Mariam John said, inner peace is not there. Like, everybody's fear of their lives because of their actions. Can you see it? Like, I was watching this forcible videos of women that were captivated. They were in safe houses, and 40 of them being captivated, captured, and put under the pressure to give that testimony that, like, they're pro-Taliban. Some women are, like, from outside of Afghanistan, provoke them to come out just only to seek asylum in other countries. That's not a good message to be honest with you, Mina Jan. If Taliban wants to be they are thinking of engagement and they want to be recognized, I think the first thing is that they need to build up a good trust between them and the people of Afghanistan, which is they're not doing. Actually, they're ignoring every individual in Afghanistan, and that's sad. That's sad. Coming back in terms of economy, because I promised myself I would be less talking about politics, more about economy. To be honest with you, Afghan Women's Chamber of Commerce is still open in Afghanistan. We are doing meetings, with the head of the Taliban, and we are trying to work harder and make sure that Afghan women are involved in terms of export and import. They could access to some of the services that we built and work hard for it in past 20 years. We have non-stop meetings with the donors outside of Afghanistan to fund some of these Afghan brands and Afghan products. The women are still in Afghanistan. We are trying very hard to negotiate with the donors to kind of like subsidize some of the programs that they have, to be able to be surviving and providing for their families. And also, we don't want to die. Like, you know, the businesses that we have worked for 20 years, we don't want to die one night. So that's something we are doing outside of Afghanistan currently. And I'm encouraging also other donors and women supporters and human rights supporters to also focus on that aspect. And that's my answer. Taliban wants to engagement. They need to prove to people that they've been changed, which is impossible. The way they're now these days I'm seeing, it's really hard. I don't think so anyone wants to participate with them. I don't think so. As Mariam John said, that they don't recognize any human rights currently, and how we could engage with them as a woman, as an activist, as a human being. I'm asking them that I need to be recognized as a woman. If you're not recognizing me as a woman, how I could come and talk to you, how I could be engaging? That's my land. The more you push me, the more I push you back. That's my hometown. That's my beloved Afghanistan. You cannot take it away. We work for it, for that name. We work for it so hard, and you cannot take away. We will raise our voice stronger than before, and I'm sure that like they cannot fight women, and they cannot survive that fight, because we are the winner of that fight. And you will see. So this is the first thing I'm going to say again, that if they want to full engagement of Afghanistan people, they have to win the trust of Afghan people. They need to ask Afghanistan population, people of Afghanistan, what we want, not them. They're not the question. We are the question. What we want. We want to include it all. As Mariam John said, we need a country without any prejudice, biases. We need every religious ethnicity be involved in the government, and everybody has the right, because everyone, from our Hindus, from our Sikh, from our Shias, from our Sunnis, from Bayats, from Arabs, every individual has the right to raise their voice, because that's their homeland. So we cannot mute anyone's voices. So that's the answer for those ones that, oh, if you're not engaging with Taliban, what's the future? I don't want to engage. As long they don't recognize me, I'm sorry. This is my message. I can't. And I'm sure like many of other women is like agreeing. If I not being recognized, how could I recognize you? I'm so sorry to say that. That's my clear message. Thank you, Minajan.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your answer, especially because I also, just as an Afghan, have really noticed that the line of questioning seems to be putting the onus on Afghan people on how to make life easier for the Taliban. How do we engage with what their needs are, when it should be the other way around? The Taliban should be asking, okay, if we want to be in Afghanistan, how do we make it work with you? How do we make it work with the women who are 50% of the population? How do we make it work with the minorities of this country? How do we make it work with you? And people from around the world are asking Afghans what they should do to make life more comfortable for the Taliban. And that's how questions are often asked, when it should be the other way around. What can Taliban do to make this work? The people are not needing to change anything, because all the people are requiring from them is equal opportunity, a good life, a secure life, and a peaceful life. So really the job of how to make this work should be coming from their side. Now, another question we got from the audience, I'm gonna share my thought because I can't help it, and then I'd love to hear Mariam John's thoughts on it as well. Somebody asked, what can men in Afghanistan do in support of Afghan women? And I have two thoughts on that. One, definitely, men should be more involved and be showing up more for Afghan women. Of course, we can see the absence in these protests, and that's absolutely valid. But at the same time, coming from an international audience, asking why not more Afghan men, why not more Afghan women, is so incredibly insulting because these are people who don't have the freedom to protest. Meanwhile, the world is full of groups, feminist groups, of human rights activism groups, of the United Nations. Why should the rest of the world be asking why people who are essentially by law unable to protest, you're asking for more of them to step up instead of supporting them from the safe places where you claim to stand for human rights? I would love to hear Mariam John's thoughts on this as well.
Thank you, Mina John,
Thank you, Mina John, for
throwing this question my way. I'd love to answer, even though I believe that Crystal John has probably a better answer than I do in regards to this. I think when it comes down to the protests, I think the Taliban were terrified of the women. It is what it is. Women, I don't think anyone scares the women more than scares the Taliban more than women. One of the first units that was made under the Taliban's army, which it's very important to note that they didn't make an Afghan national army, they made an Islamic army. So what that means, we can talk about this further if you guys are interested. But the second unit that they've made today is a group of 40 women that they trained on what is a hijab. They made an MOI for police. So they made a unit for women because they didn't know how to handle the female protesters. If anything, I think the women can be a huge safety for the men. I don't think the Taliban have the capacity to understand how to deal with women, how to speak with women. It's a completely foreign idea for them. They've spent over 2 decades being trained and brainwashed into this ideology that only exists right now in Afghanistan. They were taught in Pakistani madrasas, and it only exists in Afghanistan. When you try to talk to the Taliban about Islamic scholars who believe that women can be leaders in Saudi, in Oman, in Abu Dhabi, in the UAE, in any of these countries, you'll see strong Muslim women leaders. But if you bring that up to the Taliban, they'll say the only country in the world that's a true Islamic country is Afghanistan. And we don't need Islamic scholars and what their opinions are from Egypt or anywhere else. So I do think that men can be of a great support. And I think especially when it comes to our Afghan men abroad who have daughters, they should raise their voices. I think the diaspora men are powerful, more powerful than they know. They should raise their voices. They should write to their governments, and they should stand with Afghan women, especially men who are entrepreneurs in the Chamber of Commerce, like Homaira Kozad said. Without 50% of the population, how do you function? I don't know any country in the world that was able to be successful with peace, through business, through anything, with 50% of the population paralyzed. So I do think for the men to succeed, they need women to stand behind them. If the men really want successful protests, they need a chain of women around them to protect them, because the Taliban get overwhelmed and they don't know what to do with whenever women get on the streets. But again, I'm going to reiterate, I don't think it's a safe time for women to protest. I don't think it's a safe time for women to get on the streets. I don't think it's a safe time for any of that until the international community decides to bring in a mechanism where it's a safe space to speak and the amnesty cards are being monitored. Until then, I really don't think anyone should do anything. And the people, the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who've left Afghanistan now, that's our job. That's literally what we're here to do. Homaira Kozad, Crystal John, Mina John, we have that luxury to be able to speak on behalf of them. We're still connected to them. I'm a member of parliament. Homaira Kozad is a businesswoman. Crystal John is a writer and an activist. We still have grassroots connections. And listening to this rhetoric that if you're not on the ground, you have no right to speak in this situation is not rude, but dangerous. It's gaslighting us in a way. It's keeping us silent. So no, I really think that women can almost speak on behalf of men and protect them more than any men can protect us. Afghan women are strong.
Thank you, Mariam John. Afghan women definitely are strong. And I would like to ask Crystal John a question. Crystal John, when we are talking about these protests, We also have a lot of people, particularly outside of Afghanistan, claiming that this is not the majority of women who feel this way against the Taliban. And they're claiming that the majority of Afghanistan actually believes or is in line with the Taliban ideology. Can we hear your thoughts about that?
This is what because Afghanistan is a country with Islamic law, so most of the reason I don't think so, because for me, like when everyone was asking as a protester why the other women couldn't come out of their home, it is because of, you know, that Afghan tradition that their men do not allow them to come out of the home. But I'm pretty sure that the women who are inside of their houses, they do not accept Taliban. And secondly, because of coming to particularly on Sharia law that they are speaking, and they're saying that, yeah, at least Taliban are Muslims and they have a good law in, so they might think, but for me, I have to say that what Taliban are saying about the Sharia and their own, well, it's not about all Afghan, especially for women, that they do not agree with the Taliban law. I mean, most of the women are scared of their life, and they do not have permission from their men to come out. But these heroes that they are coming at this situation, insecurity out of their homes, and speak about the violation of human rights or women rights from Taliban side, I really appreciate it. But outside, I must say for the outsider of Afghanistan that no, they don't accept it. But the main reason that they cannot come and speak on outside is because of the restriction that they have inside of the home. They have still, they cannot raise their voice, because I'm pretty sure for me, when I went outside of the when I went for the protest, my dad called like, come, because you know that we can't trust Taliban and they're gonna shoot you. So I would, not only me, but I'm this is the situation and the condition of all Afghan women, that they are not allowed to come to their home. And but Afghan women, I don't think that Afghan women or the protesters need anything more from Taliban, rather their rights, because I'm against the ideology of the Taliban that they have for women, because what Sharia is giving to us, and we believe in that Islam is totally different from Taliban's law, because if we see as for example, that protester says that we need food, we need freedom, we need education. So I don't think that food is something unlawful in Islam, illegal in Islam, or education, which is mandatory for both men and women in Islam. And it should be clear that this ideology of the Taliban belongs to a smaller group. Women are half of the population of Afghanistan, and I believe, like, if they accept, maybe 100,000 accept, but 20 million, 50 million do not accept this ideology, and they won't accept it. As Homaira John mentioned very well, that if the Taliban do not recognize us, we will not recognize them. They must accept us. I am pretty sure that half of their families are outside of Afghanistan with Western outfits. I know people that they have all their records. Can they impose this Islam to their families, that they are just asking Islam for the innocent people who cannot raise their voice, who is thirsty for freedom? I must ask the Taliban that instead of abdicating the women who are asking for the food, which is a primary need for the women, for the people of Afghanistan, for education, they have to first bring their families inside of Afghanistan. We see that they are against Western education system. Then why they themselves study in Western universities? Most of them, like, if their soldier has been trained inside of Pakistan and their leaders study in Western universities, they do what they speak, what they claim they are for themselves, they are doing against. But for Afghanistan, inside of Afghanistan, they do not accept these changes, that a girl should go outside of Afghanistan and continue her education. I mean, protesters do not ask anything which is against Islam, or which is I don't think that when they are seeking to get recognition from the Western countries, when they seek their monetary aids from the Western countries, then what's their problem with living or having a standard of life from Western instead of Afghanistan? We had a very normal life, as I see that the people who lived over past 20 years inside of Afghanistan, because I don't know before that, I'm a generation from last 2 decades. So we had a normal life. We were wearing our hijab. We were going to school. We didn't do anything against Islam. So I don't know for what kind of Islam, for what kind of Sharia they are asking. Is it the Sharia that I don't know that in which part of verses of Quran Sharif or Hadith it says that the woman should hide their faces? I can't see that. While they claim that it's compulsory, it's mandatory that women should cover their faces, their hands. And compared to real Islam, it's totally different. It's in contrast what they are saying with Islam. And they are saying that we are supporting, as yesterday that women were confessing that, yeah, we receive messages from them. Yeah, I proudly say this, that we are supporting women till the moment that we have a contact with them, because we will not allow Taliban to get this right from us. We are supporting them. And we are not supporting for wrong thing. We are supporting for the right thing. We support them for their education. We support them for their basic rights. Can't we see the progress in the rest of the world, that what we see in Afghanistan, they were not able to save a kid from trapped in the well for 3 days. So this is the result. If you keep the country with, if you keep this people without education, they are not able to do anything with technology. We will not be able to see any progress in the future in our country. So I personally do not accept their ideologies, what they say from Islam, what they say about these girls, that they want to bring Western cultures. No, I must say that that ideology for the rest of the world, because they say that, yeah, Taliban are Islamic group and they just need Islam. No, they have a specific role and love from their thoughts. And this ideology belongs to a small and terrorist group. We don't accept that kind of Islam. We follow our real Islam, which the rest of the world. Don't you see that half of the population of Indian people, India is Muslim, and they are free what to do. It's a secular country. They do. This is what I want for Afghanistan. I don't want any more. Everyone should do what they want. Turkey or other Arabic countries. So coming to Afghanistan, is it only the Sharia or Islam is inside of Afghanistan, or the rest of the world? We see lots of Muslim outside of Afghanistan. I mean, most of population of Muslims are not only inside of Afghanistan. what they claims that no, we want Islamic countries. I'm not against Islamic countries, Islamic government, but I'm against that what they say about Islam, what their law is about Islam. And the protesters are not following any kind of other religion. They are Muslim and they are asking for their own rights. Thank you, Ineta.
Thank you so much, Crystal John. I think some really important points came up there that, you know, especially people who are unfamiliar with Afghanistan's situation need to think about what are these women protesting for? What is the content of what they're asking for? Is it, and I think they often get confused thinking that this is a religious debate when really it's asking for the rights that they have earned within the religion of Islam, and that they have every right to within the religion of Islam. And secondly, that also I think we failed to mention that with the rights that these women are protesting for and asking for, it does not mean that people who choose to live under a more strict Sharia kind of lifestyle would not be able to do so. They could live that way within Afghanistan. They could live as strict as they wanted to under whatever ideology they felt more comfortable with. What we're asking, or what Afghan women are protesting for, is for their own basic rights and for their right to live an Islamic life as they've always known in Afghanistan and under the Afghan within the Afghan culture, as it always has been. Afghanistan is a Islamic country. Afghanistan is a conservative Islamic country and has been, and that wouldn't change with the conditions that the women are protesting for, nor would it block any others from living a lifestyle that they were comfortable with. We're going to go to a question via video. I think it came in from India. We're going to play that, and perhaps anyone can jump in and answer, or if all of you want to answer, you're welcome to do so. We'll play the video now, please.
A large intellectual population of Afghanistan, like yourself, have had to escape. Two questions thus. How will nation building happen within? What can this diaspora do to help those who are in the country?
So essentially, I guess she's asking if so many of us are out in the diaspora, what can we do from outside?
I guess
I'll begin.
Since my mic is on. Nation building can only begin once the Afghan people themselves decide that this is the government that I support, and that can only happen through democratic elections. I don't believe that this is possible without that. When it comes to the diaspora, when it comes to all of us, I can firsthand say that life in Afghanistan is where we belong, where Mina belongs, where Crystal belongs, where Homaira Jan belongs, where I belong. That's our home, and we don't want to be out of our home. But going back to Afghanistan, even if they don't kill us, even if they don't arrest us, in a way, it's legitimizing the Taliban. So us not being in Afghanistan in itself is a protest. It would help the Taliban to have women like us, and they don't realize it. And maybe they do, but we shouldn't give them that honor to have women such as the women on right now within the country to help rebuild it. When it comes to nation building, number one, first and foremost, it needs to be an internal discussion. I don't believe the old faces in the old government can help fix this. I don't think the old warlords can help this, and I don't think that's needed at this point. I think it is what it is. The Taliban are there, but the international community has to bring in pressure to bring in representatives from every ethnic group, every minority group, women, and have a truly inclusive government. And through a mechanism which is approved by the Afghan people, be it an election, I really think a democratic election is the only way possible and the only way forward with this. So making a long story short, I think that it has to be an Afghan-led process where the Afghan people first recognize their government. Thus far, the Taliban haven't even been recognized by the Afghan people. They're still the Taliban. This is not a government of Afghanistan. If Homaira Jan wants to speak or Crystal John wants to speak.
Okay. Yes, Mariam John, I'm agreeing with you. First, they need to understand that they should be recognized by their own people. And sadly, it's not happening. And in terms of nation building, I'm sorry to say that, like, you know, whose fault is that everybody left the country? Like, and we need the international community to understand what they have done to Afghanistan, what was not right. And millions of people dislocated from their houses. 30 million people are suffering due to poverty and lack of, there's no money. There's economy is like about to get paralyzed forever. So for us, we never wanted to live actually abroad. We had the opportunity always. People like Mariam John, myself, we put the entire life in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is my house, my home, my homeland, and no matter what, we will serve. We will do our best to serve our people. But before that, we need Taliban, the current ruler, needs to take some actions, and that is the democratic election involving all ethnicities, all minorities. Like, you know, as Mariam John said, it's not like a one-man show. It's like everyone needs to be involved. So first step is that, like, you know, we want to see how things were going on with I heard that like a few negotiations are going on, like, you know, but the thing is with whom? We don't trust like people who were previously running Afghanistan. We don't trust those leaders, like political leaders, religious leaders, or those the ones that we seen how they neglect Afghanistan and run away. So involvement of all ethnicities is required, and women, like, you know, we want to see our rights. I'm not talking about men because they will deal what they want to deal, but my rights is important, and my like, you know, sometimes people say it's a 50%. I say that Afghan women are more than 50% of the population, so we are about 60% or more than that. So you cannot ignore that fact. I think I honestly wish for a better future for Afghanistan. That's my wish. That's my wish that, like, you know, people, my next generation, we didn't see anything except fight, war, running away, migration, nothing more than that. We don't see anything. We are not as lucky as Crystal John that, like, you know, in 20 years she was living a life, like, you know, at least acceptable. But we run, like, you know, we are the children of war, so we've seen so much of it, and I cannot tolerate it. I don't want to see this for next generation to the way we lost our hopes. So that's my hope, and that's my prayer from God, that end this misery for Afghanistan and Afghanistan people.
We are running short on time, so we'll do one more question. And just on that question about diaspora, I will say that, as Homaira Jan mentioned, we are generations of war at this point. So to have an expectation that children whose parents fled 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago should somehow be solving this problem that the entire international community couldn't solve, that's a pretty intense request as well, because we've had so many generations go through war that it's not something that we can snap our fingers and solve, especially with so many international interference. having happened all this time. We're going to jump to another question, and then we'll come back, and I would love to hear final thoughts from all of our speakers. Let's hear the next question, and whoever wants to answer it once we've listened. Thank you.
Are there any similarities that can be drawn for the treatment of women in Afghanistan to the treatment of women in Saudi Arabia? Both countries that are governed by Sharia law. What we see is the younger generations in Saudi Arabia slowly beginning to emancipate women. Are there any lessons that can be drawn and then applied back to Afghanistan? And if so, what can countries like Saudi Arabia or Pakistan and other Islamic countries that have more freedom for their women, what can they do to apply some pressure to the Taliban?
Would any of you like to take that question? Raise your hand. Mariam John, please go ahead.
I'll start off. It's a sad day whenever we're talking about how Saudi Arabia has more women's rights than Afghanistan, when we were a country where our U.S. ambassador was a woman, where we had a strong women's chamber of commerce, we had a strong arts group, we had robotics engineers, robotics and award-winning robotics team, we had award-winning coders, we had a taekwondo team, we had all kinds of female heroes. We had members of parliament, highest percentage, probably one of the highest percentage in the whole world of representatives, female representatives. And now we're comparing us to Saudi Arabia. First and foremost, we have to look at Afghanistan's geographical location and who the Taliban really are. They're a proxy of Pakistan. This is something that I've been yelling about over a decade, about how we need to close down the extremist factories in Pakistan on the border, on the Duran line, where there and throughout all of Pakistan. I think throughout Pakistan there's 40,000 or more than 40,000 madrasas who are pushing the same ideology of what the Taliban believe. And so it's been over 2-3 decades now that they've been teaching people that this is the real Islam. This is a full right wing of Islam, and I don't think a country has ever been ruled by this kind of Islam. I don't think Saudi Arabia has been ruled by this kind of Islam. I don't think Pakistan has ever. Pakistan is very free, a lot of rights for women, but not for Afghanistan. They believe that Afghans should have Taliban, but Pakistan should have full freedom of rights. I do believe that the Arab world has engaged, and they've tried to say, okay, let us speak to some Islamic scholars. You should speak. Women have rights. Women have this and this, and in Islamic law, these are the rights, which has always been there since the beginning of Islam in Afghanistan. We've always had Islamic rights. There's never been a period where boys and girls went to school together or women didn't wear headscarves. We've always had this. This is just an excuse to give a country to a group of extremists who are practicing a form of Islam that's very dangerous to the whole world. What I'm foreseeing is that far-right political opportunists in the Islamic world will soon be looking at the Taliban for advice and how they can take control over their countries as well, and say, okay, this is the real Islam. And sadly, they might take advantage of the situation, and they're very happy over the fact that Taliban beat in the middle of this. But in general, I don't think that there's anything that we can learn from Saudi Arabia or Pakistan. I think it's better to keep pushing the idea of a secular country where religion and state are separate, where our Sikhs and Hindus have their rights, where Muslims have their rights, where you're able to practice whatever belief you have, and under the same as Afghan culture. Our Afghan culture has always been a culture that respects Sharia law. That's always been an Islamically led culture. So if that happens, I think a lot will change, and I think a lot of peace will happen for Afghanistan. Homaira Kozad, if you want to speak, you can go ahead.
I just want to acknowledge what you said, Mariam John, and I want to say that, like, in Islam also we had women, very empowered women, like very powerful women like Bibi Khadija and Bibi Aisha, and they're a role example of, like, you know, a strong woman. And now these days, when we have like opportunities in a space, Twitter space, we talk with some of the and Taliban's representative, I also mentioned this, like, look at the Saudi Arabia and look at the Emirates, look at the Qatar or Pakistan's. Women are not wearing even their headscarves, but in Afghanistan, we do wear our scarves. My mom is a Muslim, I'm a Muslim, and like my entire family is Muslim, but we are neighbor with, like, you know, Sikhs and Hindus. So, like, you know, this is country of like all culture, all religions, and it's a beautiful culture and religions. So you cannot force something that it's not, like, you know, forcible. We're Muslim, and how you turn a Muslim person to a Muslim? Like, what kind of Islam are you talking about? Already I'm a Muslim, and I believe in Islam. I believe on the rights that Islam has given to me, that, like, you know, and you know, the one thing we always forgot, like, you know, Pakistan could like, you know, always wanted Afghanistan to be kind of in an unsafe side because it's more profitable for Pakistan. We should always remember that. But also our politician made that job easier for them, you know, with the wrong diplomacy. And also I want to say to those all Arab nations that when you're coming and supporting Taliban, why women, like, you know, women rights is not in that agenda? Like, when there's a peace talks or negotiation or recognition or like unfreezing the assets, none of the international community or our allies or Muslim brothers, they never talk about the suffers that women is enduring every single day in Afghanistan. You know what? I was so excited to see that, like, they appointed a woman for a women hospital. That's also so sad. Like, you know, a woman can run the entire ministry, just like they were so excited. We appointed a woman to be the head of women hospital. Excuse me, are you going to appoint a man to be head of the women hospital? That's like a maternity hospital. It's really heartbreaking the way I see it. And again, I'm going to say this very openly, that we're not Saudi Arab, because we have earned our freedom long before them, and we are not Pakistan. We have learned and earned things before that. Like, you know, we had the right to vote, we had the right to run for election, we had the right to go to school, we had the right to choose what we want, like, you know, how we want to dress up. And now you're taking us like every opportunity, every right we have. So I don't want to compare myself to Saudi Arabs women. Saudi Arab women are just recently able to drive, but we were driving cars for like 30-40 years back. So please don't compare us with them, and our rights need to be recognized. And again, I'm asking, when there is like negotiation with the Taliban in a large community, like international level, please make sure that Afghan women should be in that negotiations. Like, you know, that's my request. And thank you so much, Mina John, for giving the opportunity.
Thank you. I am going to go over to Crystal John and get maybe her thoughts on this as well as Crystal John, if you could give us some of your final thoughts and we can wrap up today. We've gone well over time. I'm going to personally thank the Open Forum for inviting me to be a part of this, and that's my final thought. So we'll just hear from all of you. I've really enjoyed this, and thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of it. Crystal John, let's hear your thoughts and final.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My last message of Afghanistan and all other international communities and neighbor countries is to unite and work for a developed free world Afghanistan. We will never achieve development and peace until we have an equal share of power. So, and if from the Taliban, I don't have any message to them because I don't want to ask anything from Taliban. We don't accept them. But for the international community, I must say that and other countries stand with women of Afghanistan. I must go to end it. Thank you.
Mariam John, can you give us your final thoughts?
Again, thank you for hosting this amazing event, bringing together some strong Afghan women. And we come from a history, a lineage of women, Afghanistan filled with us. But without the international community, without giving us a safe space so we can speak, you're not going to hear from them. When you're trapped by your abuser and no one is going to help you, why would you speak? You have to survive first. And that's the state of Afghan women today. They're in survival mode. So when you're hearing the women on video from the Ministry of Interior of the Taliban stating that we're getting foreign assistance, we're doing this, we only did it to get visas to leave the country. They risk their lives. They risk getting stoned to death for a visa? I don't believe so. These are strong, educated, amazing women who had hopes and dreams. So now they're living in a nightmare. Any woman who had a dream yesterday is living in a nightmare today. And it's a global responsibility of not just the men, but as a woman to stand with Afghan women and let our voices be heard for the sake of our nation. We need an inclusive government. We need you to write to your governments. We need to write you to write to your representatives to stand with Afghan women. Another point is that I forgot to bring this up earlier. I should bring this up right now, is that there was a protest when the NSA of Pakistan was coming into Afghanistan, and a young man named Azim Azimi, who wasn't protesting against the Taliban, he was protesting against the meddling of Pakistan in Afghanistan and bringing this extremist ideology into Afghanistan. When he stood up and he protested, he was arrested, and to this day he's missing. His family can't find him. No one can find him. And this is happening in huge numbers. The Taliban are talking about how death has dropped and how there's less suicide bombings, there's less killings that are happening throughout Afghanistan. Well, you stopped doing it. You stopped sending children to blow themselves up in highly densely populated areas. So those numbers have dropped. There's no one doing that anymore. But in reality, there's a scary amount of silence in the public, but me, myself, Homaira Kozad, Mina Jan know about it, that behind the scenes, what's really happening. There are people missing. There are people who are being abused. There are people who are having target killings. The Taliban government is also so decentralized that they don't have control over what's happening in their own police districts in Kabul, let alone the provinces. So every Talib believes he's judge, jury, and executioner. There is no judicial system. There is no checks and balances. So the amount of atrocities and murders, torturing that's happening in Afghanistan is not being recorded whatsoever. And I hope and I pray that we can all raise our voices so the international community and the UN step up and they start monitoring. I hope there's reporting, and I hope that the human rights people of the world gather and they start paying attention to what really is happening in Afghanistan. Enough is enough. These disgusting, sick politics that are happening in the region needs to stop. Afghans need to unite, and not just for the sake of unity. They need to unite for a larger cause. So, and I believe in our people. I think in the last 20 years we've really grown, and I have so much faith in the actual Afghan people, not in the old leadership, not in anyone else. But I believe that the Afghan people will come together, and there will be a beautiful, inclusive government where women will be able to dream again. Thank you again, Mina Jan, and thank you again, Open Forum.
Homaira John, we will hear your thoughts as well, and then I will say a final goodbye, and off you'll go. Thank you, Homaira John.
Thank you, Mina.
Thank you, Mina.
I'm so happy to see such a strong women, and I heard their voices. And this is women of Afghanistan. This voice that you heard from Mariam John, from Crystal, from myself, this is the voice of true Afghan women, and we are not going to stop. We are always there for our people, and we are hoping soon we will return home in a country that we all miss to death, and my wish, my prayer, my request from God is a peace, and for my people. And that's it, nothing more than that. We suffer so much, 40, 60 years of war. That's more than enough. And I hope the international partners we have had in past and currently our neighboring countries, and also people of Afghanistan, realize Afghanistan and unsafe Afghanistan is not going to be a good sign for other countries as well. And they should recognize, they should understand. And the only last word I can say is I want to shout out to those brave women that they stand for Afghan women rights. And also at the beginning, we have had few men also that they were accompanying those women. Sadly, they were also captured, tortured, and released based on grantor. I want to say thank you so much. You are the voice of Afghan women and men, and be proud of you guys. Thank you for you, Mina Jan, and Open Forum as well for hosting us.
Thank you again. And I would like to point out that Open Forum invited all of us here today. And although Afghan women are such a hot topic, everyone likes to talk about us. No one likes to talk with us. And that's something that I really enjoyed today, that it was all Afghan women. And although we are not in the country, I hope that one day the country is free enough that that's where you will hear the women speaking from. That's where maybe you'll hear us speaking from. But until then, I think organizations like the Open Forum, initiatives like the Open Forum, need to continue to get these conversations led by Afghan women. That's enough of people speaking for us, I think. So thank you all for your time today and for having